So welcome. This is the second of 4 classes called the Alchemy of Life. And in our first class, we talked about the real meaning of alchemy. The historic meaning is turning lead to gold, but the actual meaning is transforming yourself, transforming your being. And that takes place through a process of transforming your perspective and your way of relating to whatever it is that you experience. So today we're going to talk about, well, how do you actually go about doing this? How do you put the pedal to the metal in the real world and engage in this process of alchemy? Well, the first thing is to realize that you can't not engage in this process of alchemy if you're in a separated state of awareness from your experience. Well, what does that mean? It means if you're in the usual state that most of us go around in, where you think, this is me, this is everything else, and look at what I'm dealing with, look at this, the things you like, the things you don't like, your reactions to things, your projection about how things are going to turn out. As long as we remain in that state, we're just going to get a continuation, basically, of the same old, same old. I mean, it'll change somewhat, but it's going to change along predictable lines, and predictable lines mean the way that things have tended to be for us. So if you're dealing with a difficult person, you're assuming, well, they're going to be difficult this time too, so I better put my guard up, and sure enough, the way you interact with them is probably going to make that projection come true, and then you'll be more convinced, well, it's just all them, that's why this is happening. It has nothing to do with me or my way of relating to this. So we have to free ourselves from the illusion that we exist separated from everything else. We can take to heart what the mystics have been saying for thousands of years, that everything is a manifestation of the oneness, whatever the oneness is called in particular traditions. And in science it would be, well, everything is really deeply entangled and interconnected with everything else. So everything that we do, and that's not just an external action, it can be our thought that we may never vocalize. It can be an emotional response. Everything we do has an effect on everything else. Or we could say everything we do has a consequence. And I talked about this last time. I think the historic and I think incorrect notion of karma is that we're destined to play out the after effects of all that we've contributed to in the past, whether good or bad. We just have to burn it all, then we can get liberated and get out of here. Well, the point has never been to get out of here. The point is to be a conscious participant in the unfolding and the evolution of what's taking place in manifestation. Oh, keep going. Okay. So, key point, change can only happen by means of your relationship with what you're experiencing. So to repeat, if that relationship is based on you presuming, without even questioning, that you're separated from what you're experiencing, you're not going to get change. You're going to get something probably predictable, but you're not going to really get unstuck. So think about all the circumstances that have happened in your life, especially the ones that are repetitive, the ones where you've gone, why does this keep happening to me? Or how come I always have to deal with, fill in the blank, people like this? Or, how come never things go the way that I want them to go? I mean, just our assumptions based on how things have been, but that's happened because we've been caught up in, Pure Light would say, we are stuck in our conditioning, our conditioned responses to the way that things have been. And one definition of awakening is freeing ourselves from that conditioning. So instead of thinking, well, awakening is getting to this blissful cosmic state of enlightenment and mystical visions of other realms and whatever, well, that's wonderful and enjoyable, but awakening is just freeing ourselves from that conditioning so that our actions are no longer limited to the way that things have been and the way that they would tend to be. We have more, what we could say, degrees of freedom, or another way of saying that we have more possibilities for what can take place. And furthermore, we have something to do with how those possibilities unfold. And that can be something beyond whatever's happened before. And that's where we're going to get into this, and Diane's going to talk some about using our creativity in this process.
Jump in here. So that, talk about the creativity then, and what he had just offered, saying, well, same old, same old. Well, I think we're in the business, many of us do create in different kinds of ways, and so create means to find something that isn't the same old, spice it up. Find the beauty in it, be thankful about it. So we're bringing the emotions in there too. So again, these opportunities, we can call them, instead of calling them the doldrums, are sitting there, and the compassionate divine one keeps offering them to us. Here you go. Let's have you try again. You've tried 4,000 times now, and here's one more time. And then we go, oh no, here it is again. So maybe this little conversation will help, and me too. Actually, there was a time where Don and I had something that we were on different sides of yesterday. And, I must say that I was the one that made a ruckus about it, but I recovered very quickly. Would you agree about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything you say, dear.
He's listening to me. So yes, we can find a way, and I'll be giving you other ways to work with your alchemical laboratory here in a bit.
So, back to the steps of how we can engage in this process of alchemy. Well, first is to recognize when you are in a separated reactive state in the midst of an experience. Well, what are the clues for this? What are some clues? One clue would be you're being judgmental. You're making assumptions that the future is going to be similar to what's happened many times in the past. You might withdraw from the situation, either actually or just kind of shut yourself down to really being open to what's going on, have feelings of helplessness, repeat things that you tried before, but they've never worked. But here, and this is one quality that we tend to have in common with donkeys, bless their hearts, is stubbornness. If it didn't work before, let's try twice as hard to do the same thing that didn't work, and by God, maybe it's going to work this time. And how well has that ever worked for you? Okay, so recognizing when we're in that space is the first step. And also having patience with yourself. So just recognizing it doesn't mean that you can just magically go, oh, I remember what they said in that second alchemy class. We're really not separate from everything. We're not really in this dualistic state. We're really deeply interconnected. Well, that'd be like you're wanting to get fit, and instead of working out, a sensible workout, you get a book on the things that you would need to do to get fit, but you never do any of them, you just read about them. It's not going to work. Okay, so first step is just awareness when you're caught up in it, even if you can't get out of it that time. Well, that's okay. Then we're going to talk about things you could do after the fact, so that the next time you're in a circumstance like that, you can do something different than what you tried before. Okay, so if we're out of balance, and maybe we weren't out of balance until we got in a situation with a difficult person, but it doesn't take long to get that way, and it's pretty easy to get out of balance listening to the news at about 10 seconds what's happening. But as soon as you recognize that that's going on, before trying to take some action to deal with it, that's just going to further the stuck place that perhaps you've been in, you can engage in what Sufis would call a process of attunement. Get yourself into harmony, independent of what's going on outside of yourself. Okay? So, there's a practice that many of you that are here probably have done before, but probably some people listening to this on YouTube aren't familiar with it, so I'll explain it. It's a simple sound practice. And the word that's used is fazl, F-A-Z-L. And fazl, I think, means something just like harmony. Okay? So, the nice thing about this practice is, as you do this practice, you can't help but gradually feel yourself coming into tune, different parts of yourself. So the way that you do this practice is you say it out loud and you keep saying it and you breathe where you need to breathe. And first I'm just going to do it by myself, but then join in, but let's all say it in unison. But when you need to breathe, just take a breath and just come back in. And you'll feel what will happen at first as we're doing it as a group. It's going to be, we'll all have our own pitch, which is fine. But at a certain point, it's just going to all come together, and then there'll be a different feeling. There'll be a shift. And maybe you'll even hear overtones, or you'll just have a feeling, wow, all of a sudden the atmosphere here just really changed. Okay. So the way you do this, F-A-Z-L, it means harmony. F-A-Z-L. And so as you do this repetitively, and you'll hear as I do it, gradually it almost becomes like vaz, vaz, vaz. But as you say it and keep it going, the F almost turns into a soft V. So listen to me do it for a while, and then I'll give you a cue when I want you to join in. And you want this sound to vibrate in the center of your chest. So let's just try, everyone listen to me first, make an ah sound, but you don't want ah, that's in your throat. You want ah, put your hand over the middle of your chest and make your own pitch, ah. Can you feel your chest vibrating? Okay, that's the sound you want when we do fazl. So listen to me first, and wait till I give you a cue, and then join in. Vaz, 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 if a higher pitch is natural for you, do that, but still have it vibrate in your chest. Now, just think fazl on the breath, and just keep it going on silently in your mind.
As you inhale or exhale?
But don't worry about inhaling or exhaling, just imagine you're doing this fazl. And since it's internally, you can inhale and exhale whenever you want and keep it going continuously in your mind. Now let go of the word in your mind and just the feeling of it, the essence. And feel not only how you're feeling, but the atmosphere of the room. Okay, and then open your eyes. So I hope you could sense a real change both in yourself and in the atmosphere of the room. And now imagine if you knew you were going to have to go deal with a difficult person, but you did this practice for just a bit before you ever were in their presence, and you could stay in this state of centeredness, what a difference it might make in how that interaction might go. And Hosmer Knight Khan talks about the nature of vibrations if two people are in different vibrational states, the one that's got the stronger and the finer vibrational state, gradually the vibrational state of the other person is going to begin to align with that one. So if you can keep that going and stay open to it, and you could even think, you're talking to someone, you could think, and we're going to talk about another way that you can work with a challenging person a little bit later in this class. But so the take home from this is find a way to get yourself in tune whenever you find yourself out of tune. Very simple. And that doesn't just have to be dealing with a difficult person. It could be a worry that you're trying to deal with. You're stuck in traffic. You got some bad news or whatever. And it's not a Pollyanna thing. You're like, oh, that doesn't make any difference. Maybe it's something serious you have to deal with. But when you're in this centered place, then you can relate to the circumstance in a way that can bring about a transformation that would not be possible if you were in your, quote, normal, which is not really normal. It's really the usual conditioned state.
Okay, so I love this idea that we're talking about an alchemical laboratory. I had some science classes in, at least in junior high and high school, and I like to think about effects that can happen, one thing working upon another. And in this sense, we're going to identify that we're in, as we're changing, transforming as we do in the spiritual essence, that we are an alchemical crucible, and things within this crucible, you think of it as a goblet, let's say, that within it are transforming. And we are not only one part of it, we're the other parts of it also that are transforming. We can do, so what do we do when we find ourselves in the crucible? And he's already named some of the feelings that we would have when we're in that crucible, where we're not feeling great about it, but we are being conscious, and so, oh, now we are in the crucible, now we can have other elements working with elements. And one of them is Fazel. Another one is looking around for a blessing that's right there. Right now I'm looking at all of you. So that makes me happy to hear that. And it could help me transform if I've been in a really strange place. Remembering that grace that I've seen in this other person, perhaps. Or doing a few rounds of a practice, like we just learned to do. Or remembering that you are a precious manifest being, meaning that you have been brought into life by the divine, and the angels themselves can't do what manifest humans can do, because we are made of the substance of the earth, and we are one with the earth in so many different kinds of ways. So as we transform, we're transforming much more than just this little itty-bitty us. Isn't that a wonderful thing? We can transform so much in the environment, but not if we think we're this little bitty thing. So just that change produces an amazing thing. Even though every thought or emotion that arises in everyday situations can be a raw material to be converted into a refined state of consciousness. Well, now we can start thinking about, oh good, I had a really mean thought yesterday. Or I was grumbly this morning and I'm feeling so bad and down. And I mean, we've got lots of those going on, probably, if you're a human being. And each one of those can be something that we work with. And the other part of this is that I remember that I have a part of my being that is a witness, a compassionate witness, I've called it. Remember me bringing this up? That if I remember the compassionate witness part and the part that's all grumbly, then that to me, that's a great combination. Because one is just so loving, it's just, pouring out of them, that part of ourself. And then the other part is troubled But they're the key to the whole thing. Okay. And so now we got a dialogue that could be going, just in maybe just loving each other. And then just thinking, oh, I could have done this. Or, hey, this reminds me of this other thing that happened. And, oh, yes, I have an idea. And, you know, what a big difference. Sometimes just coming into a class like this, as we come in, feeling pretty good. And then how do we feel we leave? Often really good. Knowing that transformation is just as easy as that. But just knowing and doing it are two different kinds of things. So I'm finding them, like I said, in my own life, of time for me to take a look at that. And the other thing I would like to share with you is something that Stephen shared with me, and it is a YouTube tape from Otis Moss III, and it's called Living in Turbulent Times. I'm going to send you all that here. It's a story of finding a way in chaos to build your internal ship. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? Now we're talking about a ship instead of a crucible. Because I think each one of us might choose something that our laboratory would be. Another opportunity could be somebody playing music. So in their music lab. And then, okay, here's a dissonant sound maybe that comes in. So you can talk about things in different kinds of ways. But in this particular one, he said, let's see, a jazz musician named Winton was playing an extraordinary solo, and a cell phone goes off right in the middle of the performance, right in the culmination of the whole thing. So the person whose phone is making the noise walks off. Winton plays the ring of the cell phone and brings it back to the composition he was playing. In the moment of chaos, because of the depth of his practicing, he was able to handle the moment. And his point is, you need to practice so that you're ready. Now, we're not all musicians. Some of us are musicians, but we are in the music of life, and we can think about, oh, this is one of those times right now. I'm going to take that in what I'm listening to, and now I'm going to think about, well, what could I work with this? What would be something that would work? In this situation that he was in, he just brought his jazz to it. So what's your jazz that you could add to it? That would be something for you to think about this week.
So far we've talked about things that you could do kind of after the fact, beforehand, some in the midst of, but another one, very powerful one that Pure Light would talk about is seeing if you can put yourself in the consciousness of the other person that you're dealing with. Okay. So, in fact, I'll elaborate this in just a bit, but let's imagine that you have a boss at work, and you can't stand your boss, and everybody you work with, oh, this boss is terrible, we hate them, and the boss is always really negative towards everybody. So when I was in my psychology practice, I'd have a fair number of clients that would tell a story like this, and I'd say, I've got an experiment I'd like you to try. So I said, first of all, just imagine, well, it's probably a reality that there's a lot of things about your boss's private life that you don't know anything about right now. He never talks about anything like that. Well, maybe he's got a very sick child at home. Maybe you don't know it, but he's had some real financial loss, or something bad has happened to him, or maybe he was really abused growing up and no one ever treated him with love and compassion, so he hasn't learned how to act like that with other people. And so I would tell my client, just imagine that any of those might be a possibility, and the next time you're interacting with your boss, see past the gruff exterior and how they're acting, and just see if you can open your heart to them, feel compassionate towards them, and relate to them in a different way than you've done before. And it may not have anything to do with saying anything very different, but you're just really open to them, and even your eyes will look a little different the way you look at them, or maybe you ask your boss something you would normally never think about saying. Well, how are you doing today, boss? How are you? I hope you're having a really great day. And he looks at, what are you trying to get from me? Because they're just suspicious, probably, because nobody usually does. But I would say, try this for a week, and I can all but guarantee you what you're going to come back and tell me next week. You're going to say, I don't understand it, but my boss is acting so much nicer to me, but they're acting just the same way with everybody else. And I say, yes, and that's because everybody else is reacting to them the way that they usually do, and it just feeds his image of himself, and so he projects all that anger back onto whoever he's talking to. So we can really help transform a person, help them at least experience, however briefly, a different possibility. And imagine how good it would feel for that boss to have one of their employees relate to them in this way, and for the boss to feel like, well, they're really not trying to get something from me. They're really acting like they really care about me. And maybe they can't admit that to anybody else, but it's going to soften them up a bit. And who knows the effect that will have. So, something to keep in mind. The mystics say, the Sufis say, everything is a unique manifestation of the divine.
Even the boss?
You're the boss, but you're probably thinking as I say this, well, how about, and you don't have to fill in the blank here, but I think a lot of blanks to fill in. So, everything is a unique manifestation of the divine, no matter how distorted that manifestation may have become. So, Hazrat Khan said every desire begins with a divine impulse, but by the time it comes down to our consciousness, sometimes it's distorted 180 degrees and we're acting in the exact opposite and maybe doing something really bad, harmful to other people. So just remembering even about the worst person you can think of, and it doesn't mean you're going, well, that's okay what they're doing because maybe, no, you're not letting them off the hook about that, but you're seeing there is a part of this person that they've never found yet. But can I see past all the garbage that they've put out and will continue to put out and see this unsprouted seed in their being that's there, because it's there in every person, that your wish for them is that someday this will blossom and they'll realize who they are and what the world really is about that they're in. Maybe that won't even happen this lifetime. Maybe it'll happen after they pass from here. But you're offering a blessing in response to toxic waste, basically.
I have a term for this now.
Okay.
And this was a term from Otis Moss that I was just speaking about. He calls it consecrated chaos. So you're admitting, yeah, this is chaos, this is a mess, or this person is very mean, or right, but I'm going to consecrate it, or I'm recognizing the consecration within it. So now you can work with that, right? Now you can work with it instead of running.
Yeah, so this relates to something I've said before. I used to say it in terms of everything as a portal to the sacred, like an opening. And now the way I put it is, in every situation, we're always at the threshold of the emergence of sacredness. And what enables that to take place is the way that we relate to that situation, that opens something up far beyond what we can perceive in our 3D time-space reality, that we think that that's all there is to the story. So we always have that opportunity in whatever circumstance that we find ourselves in. And with that, the beautiful teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is, don't be attached to the fruits of your actions. So let's say you try to take to heart what we're talking about here, and you go, well, I did this for a week and the world's still horrible. This doesn't work. You're not attached to the fruit of it, but you're trusting that in the big scheme of things, you're contributing to a harmony emerging throughout all of existence, that if enough people begin to live their lives in this way, the power of that is going to be so much greater then all the individual cast of characters that are going around at war with other characters in the drama. I mean, this is the story that's played out throughout history. If we want to change that, we can't change it from within the existing script. We have to get to a place, Pierre Blight would say, become capable of participating in the divine programming, and I would say become capable of participating in the new creation that emerges at every instant, and seeding what emerges in that new creation that's going to open up new possibilities that were never there before. We can do that. And instead of thinking about spirituality, well, I'm just doing this for myself, that doesn't seem very fulfilling anymore. In fact, it seems quite selfish. Well, let the world go to hell in a handbasket, but I'm going to be fine because I'm taking the express elevator up to transcendentalism up there somewhere. Here, Black called that the spiritual bypass. The reason we're in the thick of things is so we can participate in it evolving and unfolding to something more. And there's always going to be chaos in existence. There couldn't be change without chaos, but there can be, as Diane mentioned this term, sacred chaos? Consecrated chaos, that we can enable something to emerge from that chaotic state, even we're in the midst of this in-between state where we don't know what's going to happen, and we feel like, well, I don't have any control. Well, you don't have any control in your separated consciousness. That's a reality. It's a frustrating one, but it's a reality. But we do have control of what we can seed the possibilities with in that state.
We'll just add a little more,
Sure.
and then you have a practice to, we're going to actually do one, right? Get into the consciousness.
We can try it.
Okay. That's thinking, I want to be consecrated chaos. So I want to also see myself that way. So I can, I'm not going to be always perfect, everything going, listen to all the things and doing them all correctly, and be able to excuse ourselves. Well, that goes with having a compassionate witness too, that we are able to take part of us and take a look at the one that is struggling, but remember, we are made of the substance of the earth, and we are made of the personalities and beingness of all those beings, and so it's working on everything. Well, no wonder it takes such a long time. It's not going to be instant. And so we are part of this sacrament, really, of the transformation of everything.
Yes, and so I just thought of a practice we'll do. You recall last time we did a pair of divine names, Jami, gathering together, and Kayum. Do you remember distilling the essence, the perfume? But now we're going to put something in the middle of that. Okay, and the new add-on is Basir, B-A-S-I-R, which means the divine sight. Divine sight, divine seeing. Seeing with the divine sight. So imagine, think of a frustrating person that you have to deal with in your life, and imagine that some great being of your choice, it could be Christ, it could be Buddha, it could be Moses, it could be the Prophet Muhammad, it could be, pick one that you really feel an affinity to. It could be Brother Francis of Assisi, and imagine how that being would be perceiving the person you're having difficulty with. What would they see when they were looking at that person? Mm-hmm. So that's step one. So try that first, briefly. Close your eyes. And imagine you're seeing through the eyes of this great being, looking at this difficult person. And recognize now if you were able to do this, you wouldn't be able to even imagine what this seeing would be like unless you had the same capacity within your own being. That we all embody within us the seeds of all the divine qualities. And some of them we have more easily accessible, we're more familiar with them, it seems more like ourselves. We have all of them available. So recognize that because you could see, imagine seeing through the eyes of this great being, you have this capacity of the divine seeing, the eyes through which God sees within your own being. So imagine now you're seeing yourself looking at this other person with those eyes, and not your usual dualistic, separated, reactive, judgmental eyes. So now briefly, we're going to put these three sacred words together. Jami, remember, means gathering together, Jami, and we invoke divine qualities by saying Ya, Ya means O, O-H-O, gathering together. And we're going to add Ya Basir, O divine seeing, O divine sight, and then Ya Qayyum, Q-A-Y-Y-U-M, O divine perfume. It's distilled from this. So now imagine whatever experiences you find yourselves in, you can just imagine you're taking it all in, but now you're seeing with different eyes than your normal eyes, with the divine sight. And from that, this perfume, this essence is distilled. So we'll say this triplet together 11 times. So I'll do it once and then join with me. We'll say it slowly. Ya Jami, Ya Basir, Ya Qayyum. Together. Ya Jami, Ya Basir, Ya Qayyum. 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 Once more. Ya Jami, Ya Basir, Ya Qayyum. And then silently on the breath, without thinking of the Ya, as you breathe in, think Jami. And on the start of the exhalation, think Basir. And at the end of the exhalation, think Qayyum. You're emanating this perfume. So you're gathering together circumstance as you inhale, thinking Jami. You're seeing with the divine sight. As you start to exhale Basir, and then continue exhaling the perfume Qayyum. Do it at your own rate. And then let go of the words and even the meaning and just feel the essence of this. And then open your eyes. And a reminder, what we said before, alchemy it's not about just changing yourself, what you think of as yourself, and it's not about just changing what's external to yourself. It's about the whole thing is transformed, and now something has been suffused into existence that wasn't there before, that becomes available to everything, not just to you. And I hope you can feel a difference. We just did this for such a short time. The atmosphere of this room, which was already beautiful, we've been doing these different ways to attune ourselves, but it's like, oh, I could just sit here and bathe in this for a long time. But you can do this. You don't have to be in a group of people to do this. You can do it on your own. You could take this little practice, and when you get caught up, you could just do it a few times on the breath with the other person, or they say something that really pushes your button, and instead of reacting right away, you just take a moment and you just think, Jami, Basir, Kayu. And then you respond, and chances are it's going to be something very different than what you were thinking of doing to start with. So this will be the end of this one. We will have part 3 next week, and thank you for being here.